Good evening and welcome to the National University Speaker Series. My name is Nancy Rowland Heinrich, and I serve as the Executive Vice President of Communications and Community Engagement for National University. I would like to acknowledge all of our audience this evening, including our amazing alumni, students, staff, faculty, and community members. National University proudly serves more than 40,000 students in 190 different programs at the bachelor, graduate, and doctoral levels. During the last 51 years, our alumni base has grown to more than 230,000 graduates. Our speaker series started in the summer of 2020, and we are so pleased to have featured more than 30 different speakers on a wide array of topics that have captured the interest of all of our participants. Tonight, we have a very gifted and talented speaker in a very unique field. We are all very interested in gaining insight from Steve Breen on his career as a nationally renowned columnist, author, and illustrator. And notably, he has received 2 Pulitzer Prizes. To share more about our speaker, I would like to introduce you to tonight's moderator, Drew Schlosberg. Drew has moderated more than a dozen of our National University Speaker Series, and we truly appreciate having a professional broadcaster with more than 40 years experience in media, marketing, PR, and the newspaper industry. Drew has the longest running podcast in the United States and is a leading consultant for Cloudcast Media. Drew and tonight's speaker, Steve, were colleagues for years at the San Diego Union Tribune, where Drew served as Community and Public Relations Director and official spokesperson for the UT. Drew is a well-known leader in the San Diego community, serving on many boards, including Junior Achievement, San Diego Council on Literacy, and the Classroom of the Future Foundation. At this time, it is my pleasure to turn things over to Drew Schlosberg to introduce our featured speaker and to moderate tonight's webinar. Thank you, Drew.
Thanks so much, Nancy, and welcome to everybody. You guys are going to be in for a treat talking to this wonderful columnist, cartoonist, I should say, probably columnist too, somewhere down the road, Steve, and a longtime colleague of mine, Steve Breen, as Nancy mentioned, 2-time Pulitzer Prize-winning cartoonist. He was on the editorial board also for the San Diego Union Tribune, worked for the paper for 22 years, content and creator and producer from 1996 to current, and he was an editorial cartoonist at Asbury Park Press. He's truly a community leader, and he's very creative. You're going to see some of his slides. What we'll do is a little bit of mixture of his favorite slides and then some questions for Steve. And don't forget to put your questions in the chat. At about 6:15, we'll go ahead and take those questions and see if Steve will even stay a little bit over to answer some of the ones we don't get to. Steve, how are you?
Very good. Thank you, Drew. Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, National University.
I know it's pretty cool stuff. Let me just get right to the questions here. How'd you get into this profession? I mean, did a light bulb come off in 5th grade, 8th grade? When did this happen?
Well, I guess I've always been able to draw. So it wasn't until I got to college and I started contributing to my school newspaper. And I had a great mentor there who suggested I look into editorial cartooning. And I didn't know much about it, how to put a cartoon together or what went into a cartoon or what it was all about. So I looked up some books at the library and boom, I kind of quickly fell in love with it.
Now, do you always have an affinity for drawing? I mean, listen, if you can't, I can't do a stick figure, for God's sake, would not make me a good editorial cartoonist. Have you always been good at graphics and drawing and so forth?
I remember in 1st grade, kids gathered around my desk watching me copy Bugs Bunny. I had a Bugs Bunny on the left and my pad of paper on the right. And they were marveling at how well I was able to copy him. And it just seemed like such an easy thing to do, but it got me a lot of attention in the classroom. And I think that set me on a course of of loving public adulation. No, but it did kind of show me that I had a gift, and I enjoyed using it, you know.
I know you and I would do a lot of tours at the Union Tribune, and we'd get this question quite a bit. It was, what is the difference between an editorial cartoon, a comic strip, or a gag cartoon? And then maybe you can get a little bit in the background, the history of editorial cartooning in the United States.
Sure. So an editorial cartoon has a point of view. There are lots of different types of cartoons out there. You mentioned a few of them, but an editorial cartoon, it's not going to leave you with any, or shouldn't leave you with any question about where the creator stands on a given topic. Okay. The first cartoon drawn in the United States, they say, was by Benjamin Franklin. It was the famous Join or Die cartoon. And I think we have a slide of that. Very simple, clean. Speaking of simple and clean, look at that guy. Real quick on this slide, I like to say that drawing editorial cartoons is somewhat akin to sticking a fork in a light socket for a living, because you are not always, but often going to get shocked. You're dabbling in these with these dangerous circuits, whether they're politics or social trends or issues of faith, and every once in a while, it's not going to turn out as you expected. And so I have another slide here of a cartoonist getting shocked. Now, this doesn't happen all the time, but you have to expect that things are going to go awry, even when you don't expect them to. It's hard to predict when there will be public outrage on a cartoon.
Yeah, absolutely. And that next slide, if we can get to that, Jen, is what you were talking about, is Join or Die. Yeah, there you go.
So this is, I'm showing this because they say that this was the first cartoon drawn in America, and it was by Benjamin Franklin, a well-known figure. He was here making a case for unity. But I don't think it was for the Revolutionary War. I think it predated that, but you'll have to consult a history professor on that. So this is a very clean cartoon, not too many labels. You have the labels of the different states, the initials. And then the next slide shows a cartoon that was done a few years later, sometime in the 19th century. And look at this thing. Look at all the labels and captions and figures. These kind of cartoons make my head hurt. But I guess at the time, this was acceptable to readers. I guess people had a lot more patience back then, maybe. But to me, that's just way too much information for the reader. Then the next slide, as we move forward in history, Thomas Nast started drawing around the middle part of the 19th century, and his style was very clean, bold, and he's considered the father of modern American political cartooning.
Well, I was going to say is that now for that's for a cartoonist. Listen, there's not many of them around, even back in the day, and all the aspect of it. So how did you find a job? I mean, is that something that is a revered position? We all know that some newspapers are shutting down and all that business. But it was tough finding that job.
It was even 20-something years ago. There weren't a lot of cartoonists out there. What I did after I had my mentor suggest that I look into editorial cartooning, I focused like a laser beam on finding a job when I graduated. So I was about 19 or so when I first got turned on to this possibility of editorial cartooning. And so I spent most Friday and Saturday nights drawing cartoons or reading old cartoons in the microfilm at the library. And then what I do is I'd mail my cartoons that I would create in the dorms to newspapers around the United States that did not have a cartoonist. And I even went so far as to getting subscriptions delivered of newspapers where I could kind of read about local politics. I did that with Connecticut, New Jersey newspapers. And then I'd send the editors a cover letter and some samples of my work. And I was hungry. I was lean and hungry.
Yeah, it's interesting, when people would ask me and then you'd come in and do these presentations, what does your average day look like? And I said, I'm not so sure if Steve's ever had an average day. You have a deadline. How many cartoons did you do for the UT in a given year? 200 plus?
Yeah, 250.
Right.
Yeah.
So here you are on deadline, and you had to turn those in by what time? 5 o'clock or so?
About 5 or 6, they were due. If you went over 6, you were in big trouble because daily deadlines don't mess around.
Right. So it's 4:59 and you don't have an idea. Has that ever happened?
Yes. Well, I mean, most recently, my deadline, my drop dead deadline was 6 o'clock. So there were times 4:59, no idea. A lot of times I'm able to go with a cartoon rough in my bag of tricks on the pile on my desk that maybe was either rejected or my editor said, that's not bad, let's consider that for later. So I kind of keep some emergency rough cartoons that never ran. But there have been times when I didn't even have one of those, So I've just prayed and sweat and forced something out like a kidney stone, like passing a stone.
Yeah.
And sometimes they've been really good actually, but sometimes they've been crummy.
Yeah, we're chatting with Steve Breen, crafting creative content, tips from a 2-time Pulitzer Prize winner, and Steve, recent editorial cartoonist, editorial board for the San Diego Union Tribune. I'm Drew Schlossberg, a colleague of Steve's. I don't know for how many years, quite a bit of years at the Union Tribune on that, Steve. Maybe we can go to the next slide, which is of Oliphant, and talk about Oliphant. He's someone who's near and dear to your heart, is he not?
Yeah, here's a cartoon. This is by Pat Oliphant. And Pat Oliphant, I guess if Thomas Nast was the father of modern American political cartooning, Pat Oliphant was maybe the I don't know, the son. Pat Oliphant brought a new sensibility to the profession, and that he added humor and he simplified the presentation. Before Pat Oliphant, the cartoons, they tended to be a little on the serious side. And Pat just kind of added this wackiness and this whimsy that didn't exist before. And so there were a ton of Pat Oliphant clones after he came along, and I was one of them. A lot of my early stuff looks very much like Pat Oliphant. In fact, I researched what kind of paintbrush he used and what kind of paper he drew on, and I went to the art store and I got those art supplies so that I could draw like Pat Oliphant. In fact, let's see, I think the next slide, you can see one of my early cartoons. Yeah, so this is one of my first editorial cartoons. And there's an Oliphant quality to it. It's framed. It looks a little old and stained, and that's because I've had it since 1989. Quick story on this cartoon. I did it for my school newspaper at UC Riverside, the Highlander, and I liked it so much I sent it to Newsweek magazine, and they ran it. And up until this time, my parents were a little skeptical about the idea of their son becoming an artist for a living, a cartoonist for a living. But when this made Newsweek, my parents were so proud. My dad cut it out of the magazine, the cartoon page, and he meticulously framed. There you can see the masthead of Newsweek, and they framed and cut out the date and presented this framed cartoon to me as a gift, and I've kept it on my desk ever since then.
Yeah, no, I
Nice
think
memento. Nice memento of my parents' early support.
well, they knew you're on the right track. Let's go to the next slide too. And there's something. Well, actually, there you go. Question for you. Certainly, you have to write about presidents. You know, you've covered a lot of them and all that aspect of it. And you know, it's going to get very political. How much pushback do you get from your editors to say, "Whoa, that went over the line. You need to redo it"? And I'm not just saying it because this is a Trump. Could it be a Biden cartoon? Could have been an Obama cartoon.
Yeah. Well, a couple things. Over time, you learn what is acceptable and what isn't. B, I am not a bomb thrower. I tend to be more moderate and a little more measured in my opinions and statements, whether I'm drawing or whether I'm at a cocktail party. You know, I kind of like to keep things in check, especially when you're dealing with politics, right? It's you're sticking a fork in a light socket. You know, you got to be very careful. So someone who's a far right Trump supporter would hear me saying all this, and they would look at this cartoon and they would say, well, this doesn't seem very measured to me. But as we can see in the next slide, I do a fair share of Biden cartoons too. Now, I've done more Trump cartoons than I have drawn Biden cartoons. It's just because Trump is a much, much more inviting target than Biden.
Yeah, and I wanted to clarify something on this. You know, I was talking to Nancy before the show started, talking about editorials. Editorials are, of course, the opinion of the newspaper, and they come from the we and the our and the us standpoint. But editorials, cartoons come from your standpoint, correct? They may or may not align necessarily with the paper, correct?
Right. I think that's the way most newspapers operate. That people kind of assume that the cartoon it stands alone. That it's the opinion of the cartoonist. We generally tried, though, at the Union Tribune to match the editorial cartoon with the edits. You know, not always, but generally we tried to.
Right. So what would you say is one of the most difficult part of the job? I mean, obviously the deadlines are crushing. I mean, because you have to be creative. You can't have the same cartoon run 15, you know, same topic 15 days in a row. You've always got to bob and weave. That has got to be tough.
Yeah, you learn how to deal with that kind of pressure. It was very scary at first. It was terrifying when I got my dream job, you know, back when I was 27. And it was kind of like, be careful what you wish for, because that Monday when I had to do my first cartoon, and then the realization I was going to have to do that Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, and this was going to be my career, sweating and trying to force these things out of my brain every day. But it's like anything else in life, you learn how to deal with the pressure, and it's really a great job. What's so great about it is you never know what the news is going to throw at you. It's an adventure every day.
Yeah, and how much flexibility did you have on doing things above and beyond the cartooning? I know you ran a caption contest that was very, very popular, and not sure if that's going to continue at all. But you also did something on the homeless. Talk about that.
Right. Well, we moved from Mission Valley, the Union Tribune. We moved the office from our Mission Valley location over down to 600 B Street. I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. And the thing that my editor and I noticed immediately, just like everyone, was the homeless problem. And again, this was 6 or 7 or 8 years ago. It was pretty bad. So we thought, what could we do that's different? And we came up with the idea of sending me out on the street around town, talking to homeless people, drawing them, and telling a little bit about their story. And I didn't want to at first, you know, leaving my cozy office to go down and interact with homeless people. It seemed a little, I don't know, borderline imprudent. But as I did it, I found that I really enjoyed it. And the homeless, they really enjoyed it too. I never had one, well, there were a couple people who probably due to mental illness or intoxication didn't want to or couldn't talk to me, but most people wanted to talk and enjoyed the process. They wanted to share their story. So that was really eye-opening. The two things that stood out for that project was how much these people wanted to talk, because you know I was treating them like they were special. I was drawing them and asking them about their childhood and what their dreams were. And then the second thing was I was struck by how reluctant they were to go to shelters. I naively went into it thinking, well, these people are here because they just don't know about Father Joe's. You know, I'll tell them about the Salvation Army or Father Joe's or, you know, whatever. And yeah, that was it. That was very interesting. Most of them did not want to take advantage of those services for various reasons.
Right. Again, want to encourage our listeners here. Folks are on to put their questions for Steve in the Q&A aspect. We're going to get to those around 6:15. Steve, two-time Pulitzer Prize-winning editorial cartoonist. Let's go to the next slide if we can on Oppenheimer.
Yes. Okay.
Talk about this one.
Here's a recent cartoon. This is one of my pop culture meets current events meets U.S. history type cartoons. I also did a Barbie cartoon for Equal Time. So yeah, the Barbenheimer thing was such a cultural phenomenon. I had to address it. Anytime something gets really, really big and everyone's talking about it, you have to do a cartoon on it, or you're duty bound to. There's no official rule, but you just feel duty bound. This is something that's always worried me. Like anyone who follows anything about this issue, there's just this proliferation of nukes floating around out there. So who knows where they all are and who's keeping an eye on things going on in Russia and, you know, Pakistan, and what's North Korea doing. And so here's Oppenheimer, the father of all this, and he's looking on with terror at the movie theater filled with these missiles.
Question for you before we go to the next slide. Where do you get your ideas from? Are you get them from your colleagues? Do you get them from your family? Do you get it from anybody? Or they only come from you, which I know is not true.
Yeah. Well, what do you mean they only come from? No, they come from me. People have called or written in ideas before. They do it a lot, especially when the news is big. You know, like during the Clinton impeachment scandal, it really fires people up. Or during all the Trump stuff, you know, during the election, the contested election, I was getting people send all kinds of Trump ideas, and I could count the times that I've gone with a reader's idea maybe on one hand, because I have to turn dozens of people away just because I just want to come up with my own stuff. And plus, you can never be sure where someone's getting an idea.
That's
right?
true.
They say, hey, this is from my wife, and you know, they pulled it off the internet. So
yeah, no, I got you. Next slide if we can.
So we call them editorial cartoons now because they don't all deal with politics. And here's the topic of egg prices last year. So there's Fabergé on the left with one of his fancy, beautiful eggs. He's saying it has a high value due to its scarcity. And there's a chicken saying ditto. I like doing these kind of cartoons.
Yeah, exactly. Getting on inflation. Let's go to the next one if we can, Jen.
Right.
Yeah.
And excuse me. Not every cartoon is funny. A lot of what I do deals with very heavy, serious issues. Fentanyl, the scourge of fentanyl in America, is a big topic and one I'm very saddened by and interested in. So here's the angel of death made up of the pills, of tablets, fentanyl tablets. Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, no question.
The FDA last year seized enough fentanyl to kill every single American.
Yeah, it's a problem to say the least on this. Jen, let's go to the next one. So this is one of the iconic Steve Breen cartoons that was shown like to what, 4 billion papers around the world.
Yeah, it seemed like it. So I did this cartoon on September 13th. The day after 9/11, a cartoon involving the Statue of Liberty ran. And I wanted to do something entirely different because a lot of cartoonists did Statue of Liberty cartoons on September 12th. So the mood kind of shifted in that short period of time. You know, on September 11th and 12th, we were all just kind of knocked to our knees, grief-stricken and just disbelief. But by the time this cartoon ran, it kind of touched a nerve because there was an anger out there and a determination to get those responsible. So these are my favorite cartoons to draw. I mean, not the subject matter per se, because I consider myself a peaceful person, and I generally don't support war unless it's a just war. But I like to draw cartoons that are easy reads, that are very, very that are free of captions and labels and unnecessary word bubbles. And I love it when you're able to do that with an icon or a famous symbol. It makes communicating with the reader so much easier because they know right away, bald eagle, America.
Yeah. Well, and if you can show the next one, Jen, that goes hand in hand.
Yeah, so I don't do a lot of sequel cartoons, but every once in a while I'll do a sequel cartoon. And that cartoon that we just saw with the sharpening of the talons ran on September 13th. And then this cartoon ran roughly a month later, maybe 5 weeks later, when we launched the attacks in Tora Bora and the terror camps in Afghanistan.
Yeah, no, very, very good on those. I know you got a lot of requests for those.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next slide, Jen.
Yeah, again, cartoonists are drawn towards famous icons. So Twitter, the Twitter bird, another iconic bird. I showed it decapitated by the new logo. So Elon Musk came up with a new Twitter logo, for those of you who don't know the story, and it was an X, just a white X on a black background. So I like to look at images and think, what else could that be? So I came up with a pair of shears.
Great. Next one, Jen.
So Lisa Marie died earlier this year. Was it this year or last year?
I think it was right after the Academy Awards. I'm not.
Yeah, so I think it was this year, right? Earlier this year.
I think so. I could be wrong.
So I'm a big Elvis fan. I've been to Graceland, so this just seemed like a natural. Sometimes you have to just sweat and stare at a blank sheet of paper and knock your head against the table and walk around the block a couple times or go for a drive, and the ideas just won't come. And other times they come in a flash and they write themselves practically. And this was an example of that.
Yeah, yeah. Very, very, very touching on that. Let's go to the next one, Jen.
So I like to play with typography and words, and I was thinking, what can I do that was different and special for Father's Day? And I'm a father of 7 kids, and I'm a proud father of 3 girls. So I wanted to do something with a father and a daughter, because I think I've in the past I've done Father's Day cartoons with boys. So anyway, this is a kind of a story of a dad's life with his daughter from birth to to the time she's kind of a middle-aged woman and he's an old man. Spells out the word father.
Yeah, no,
It
very.
took a while. The hardest one, can you guess what the hardest letter to come up with the positioning was?
The last one?
It was the E.
Really?
Yeah, it was the E. I don't know why.
Well, this is why I'm not a cartoonist. So yeah, let's go on to the next slide, Jen.
Okay. So we borrowed an idea from the New Yorker about 10 or 11 years ago, the cartoon caption contest. And we just kind of did it as an experiment to see what would happen. And it quickly became a really popular feature in the newspaper. And again, we are not claiming it was original, but we had a ton of fun with it. And I think readers did too. We would get hundreds of entries every week. And here's one. Here's a judge, and here's the baby. And this, you're going to ask me what was the winning caption here, and I can't remember, but it was something involving nap time. I can't say for sure, but it was, the judge was saying something about nap time. Let's see. I think the next one is also an example from our caption contest. Okay, yeah. This one I remember the winning caption. It was, that's not what I meant when I asked you to put something over the fire. Something like that, right? Like cooking food instead of drawing something on the wall. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So yeah. Anyway, I just have to give a shout out to our readers out there and how clever people are. Not most of the cartoons that come in, I would say, are just kind of mediocre or predictable, but a lot of great ones come in, and not a week goes by where I don't chuckle. And the student entries are also amazing too, for how clever those young people are.
Right. Jen, yeah. Let's go to the next one. You do books too.
Yes. Plug time. I have been drawing children's books for about I don't know, 15 years. I guess having kids made me want to give it a try. So here's some of my titles, and it's a lot of fun. They're a lot of work. It's kind of like editorial cartooning. It's one of those things that seems easy, but they are actually a lot of work to put together. Let's see, so these are picture books, and I think the next slide, I think, is my humor book. An agent suggested to me that I did a collection. I drew a collection of cartoons that I drew for my boys, and I don't know if you know junior high boy humor, but well, you were a boy.
I still am, but
okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so I kind of reverted back to being in 7th or 8th grade, and I did this book with my sons called Unicorn Executions.
Yeah, let's go to the next slide. Is that on the next?
Wait, well, this one real quick. I'll say this is the latest project. I'm working on Sky and Tie, which is a graphic novel. It comes out next year, so you could pre-order on Amazon. Sky and Tie.
And then the unicorn.
Yeah, let's see, unicorn. Okay, so I did this book. This could have been my favorite project outside of editorial cartooning. Unicorn execution. So there's a unicorn about to execute some guy. Sick. And there's all kinds of drawings in here about Bigfoot surfing or the Incredible Hulk smashing a zombie with his fists, and just all kinds of crazy stuff. You can see the foreword is by Kim Jong-un. That was quite a get. But this book was my agent. She shopped it around Hollywood, and there was a 5 studio bidding war for the rights to this book to turn it into a movie.
That's pretty exciting.
It was super exciting.
So let's go to the last one, Power Birds.
Ah, yes, Power Birds. Right. So just another bit of creative content. And I had a parakeet growing up. It was my first pet. So I came up with an idea for a TV show a few years ago. What if a kid who owned a couple parakeets, what if when he went to school, they became superheroes and saved the day, unbeknownst to him? And by the time he walked back in his bedroom in the afternoon, they had zipped back into their cage, pretending like they were sweet, innocent little parakeets. This is Power Birds, and this ran on Universal Kids.
You know, Steve, yeah, did you not include the British Petroleum oil spill in your slides?
Oh, I meant to.
Well, I'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and explain to the group over here. What year was that? The BP oil spill? Do you remember?
like 2010, roughly,
Right.
2009 or 2010, I think.
Yeah, as everyone knows, obviously the most catastrophic spill in the world's history at that point. Steve went and flew on his own dime to the Gulf Coast and picked up some of the sand, the beaches that had been destroyed by the oil, brought it back to San Diego and dissolved that oil with paint thinner and fire or whatever, and you made an ink out of it, and you actually drew editorial cartoons about the oil spill using oil from the oil spill. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that was an adventure, and it was cool on the Union Tribune's part that they just gave me so much real estate to run the cartoons. I didn't tell them I was doing it. I just flew to Louisiana and rented a car and just scraped off oil that was washing ashore on these beautiful, pristine beaches. People don't realize how beautiful the beaches are in Alabama and like the Florida Panhandle. Oh, so nice, and the sand is like just white sugar. So so horrible. And then you had, not to mention the ecological damage with the animals affected and the jobs lost. So it was a big story. So yeah, oh, there we go. There's one of the cartoons that I did. So that amber colored paint is not paint. It's oil from the actual floor of the Gulf of Mexico.
Very, very creative. And I remember, I think 10 ABC News did actually came into your studio, so to speak, and watched you draw this. So talk a little bit about, what's life for Steve Breen after the UT? I mean, such an iconic career, and you're a young guy. You got a lot more, gas in the tank, to say the least. What's next?
Thank you, Drew. I don't know exactly. I'm kind of considering what to do next. So it's kind of exciting that the world is my oyster, and different possibilities. Maybe teach, maybe something advertising, marketing. I don't know. But I'll probably dabble in editorial cartoons. I'll probably kind of keep a hand in that on the side because I love it so much, as well as the books.
Right. Now, are you still doing some editorial cartooning for some people as we speak?
I do have a contract to syndicate my cartoons. I'm with creators in Los Angeles, so I'm still doing national cartoons. But we'll see. I could have an announcement about some developments within the next several weeks.
So you're not going to break it here, is that correct? Is that what you're telling us?
I would be honored to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I mean when the time is right. It's a little too early, but the point is
that's a bad tease, Steve. Okay.
I'm sorry. We don't have things nailed down yet, but I'm talking to various sources about continuing to draw in San Diego.
Very, very good. I'm just going to go through some of the questions that our attendees have asked you, and we'll take these for about maybe 12 minutes or so. Then I know Nancy's going to do a little sign off, and then if you're willing to stay extra for a few minutes, we'll take even more questions. How's that sound,
Sure.
Steve?
Sure.
All right. Are there ethical standards you need to consider when creating a cartoon?
Yes, you want to be fair and you want to be accurate as a journalist. And I think any journalist would tell you that, whether he's writing a column or drawing a cartoon.
Okay. And so let me get back to something before we get to the next question. We sort of touched on it a little bit. Have you ever had your editor say, you're not running this tomorrow, you need to start over?
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're going to ask which one was it? I can't remember specific examples, and it hasn't happened a lot. It hasn't happened a lot because I kind of get a sense of what my editors will go for. Certainly no potty humor.
Yeah.
No bad words. No nudity.
Right.
My mom lives in Oceanside, so she sees my cartoons, so I have to be good.
Yeah, no, you don't want to irritate mom. I'll tell you that right now. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
Do you utilize AI to help you generate creative content?
No, I have not. But it's something I ask myself, and it's one of these things that we're all wrestling with. People who create content for a living. Where I stand right now is I do see the potential of AI being a threat to people who draw or create art, illustrate, paint, any kind of creative profession. It's a threat. But at the same time, I also see that it could be a useful tool sometimes, And the example that I've kind of come up with, and I've told someone else is, okay, so let's say I came up with a really complicated angle on a cartoon, like Godzilla standing on top of the Capitol Dome in Washington, right? Well, I could enter the prompts into Midjourney and have Midjourney, which is an AI art application, come up with some art for me. But it would be unethical to use one of those pieces that it came up with. But maybe it could potentially be okay for me to look at what it came up with, and I see the positioning of the foot. Maybe I'll draw the foot of Godzilla on top of the dome like that. So in other words, using it as a tool, not as something that does the work for you, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying I'm going to do that. I'm not saying I do that. I don't use Midjourney, but I'm just saying that potentially could be a way that it could help artists.
No, I get that for sure. Did you know your predecessor, who I knew very, very well, I worked with him, Steve Kelly?
Yeah. Do I know him?
Yeah. Did you work with
Yes.
him? I mean, did you work with him obviously you guys did not cross paths. He had left when you took the job there, but did you folks work in other type of projects together at all?
Yeah, we did. We actually collaborated on a comic strip that I ultimately didn't work on with him, but we kind of did it for a few months together. And I've known Steve for years. And we're a tight little community, editorial cartoonists. But Steve Kelly, very talented.
Yeah. No question. I remember working with him quite a bit. Let me ask you this: do you know when you have written a cartoon and it's going to be published? Boy, that was not one of my best efforts, but you know what? I had to get it out.
Absolutely. It's part of the it's part of the job that just happens. You know, I mean, pure art, I guess, is the artist not releasing his piece or her piece, whether it's a sculpture or an oil painting or whatever, until they are 100% satisfied with it. You don't have that luxury in this art form. You have to release stuff to the public that you're only 74% satisfied with, right? Just because you got to meet that deadline.
Yeah, here's a good question. You might have dabbled on it a little bit, but it's a great question. Can you share strategies that you've worked for you to try to be creative, coming up with content when you are looking at that deadline right in your face? What strategies do you use besides pray?
Yeah. Yeah, I do pray. And I also think it's healthy to get your blood flowing in your brain. So exercise is great, even if it's just a walk, super helpful. Go do something completely different than think about that problem at hand and then come back to it. And often you'll have like this freshness, this different perspective.
So I think we may have touched on it a little bit, but that's in the eye of the beholder. Which cartoon do you consider your most famous?
Well, I'm not saying it's my favorite cartoon, but I think that eagle sharpening its talons is my objectively it's my most famous cartoon. I
What
mean,
is your
people were sending me photos of tattoos on their biceps that they had that they put that eagle on their arms, tattoos and military patches and flags and whatnot. That cartoon.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. What's your favorite cartoon of all time? And that is a tough question. You got about an hour to answer it.
I don't have one. I have every year I could tell you I have 10 favorites, but I don't have I really like that Lemmings one I showed earlier. That's probably one of my top 10 favorite ones this year with the lemmings, the yellow lemmings like Trump's hair and they're going off the cliff. I thought that one came out well.
Yeah.
But I don't have a favorite.
So do you know a gentleman by the name of Chad Little by any chance?
I've heard of Chad. Oh, Chad Little. Yeah, I do know Chad Little. Yeah. I think I went to high school with him.
You did. And
Is
he was talking about in the question and answer that you were a talented artist back in 1988.
Yeah. Chad was a great guy. He's a lot like you. He was very affable, friendly, and smart. I loved him. Hey, Chad, what's up, buddy?
Yeah, I think that's great. So let me ask you this. There are things that you have in mind when you get the office and you think you're going to write this cartoon, and then all of a sudden the world explodes, whether it's a 9/11 or it's Princess Diana dying in a car wreck, or Mother Teresa dying. Tell me where you are all ready to go, and then all of a sudden you had to switch gears.
Well, that happens regularly, where my editor will text me or call me or Slack me, and he'll say, "Hey, scrap the plans for what you were working on. We gotta do something else." And again, I can't think of an occasion where that has happened. I remember once in New Jersey, there was a fugitive, it was a politician. This is 25 years ago. It was a politician, and he was on the lam. He was wanted for something. This is Jersey, and it kind of became a joke. Like, where did this guy go? He ran away. He's in trouble, and he ran away. And I was doing a cartoon on him, something kind of lighthearted, and then they found him dead. One afternoon, and my editor had to come in and say, the 2 hours you spent inking that cartoon has been wasted. We have to go with something else tomorrow because we couldn't run it, obviously. But
No. Yeah.
but yeah, that has happened, and it's part of the game. You have to be nimble. You have to have a backup cartoon.
Well, speaking about that, talk about, and just like writers, artists, you are, how thick is your skin?
Gotten thicker. Well, when I first started, I was thin-skinned, as most of us are when we're young and we kind of step into the public, onto the stage, and we get some criticism, like, how dare they say that about me? But what you realize as an editorial cartoonist over time is it's not me. It's sticking the fork in the light socket. It's they're fired up about topic A or B, and they would be getting upset if it was someone else who did a similar cartoon. It's so they're not angry. It's not personal. They're fired up about the issue. And when people call really angry, a lot of times I'm just listening to them and hearing them out and asking them to explain themselves. I could take them from like a 10 on the irate scale down to like maybe a 4 by just letting them talk and vent, because they want to be heard. They want to feel like what they have to say matters. We all do.
Right. Question from Alberto: where can I buy your children's books?
Oh, well, I probably Amazon at the moment. My Sky and Tie is coming out next year, so they're not in bookstores right now, but Amazon is probably the best.
Right, exactly. Were you ever influenced by late night television comedy writers? I mean, I'm sure you watch a lot and get ideas from everywhere. Any late night?
Absolutely. Is this a setup? Is this someone writing this?
Yeah, I did not make this up. It came from Colin.
Well, really quickly, when I was in college, I went to a taping of The Tonight Show, and Johnny Carson on this particular evening, he asked audience members to write jokes, and he actually selected my joke and closed the bit out with the joke that I wrote for him.
And the
It's
joke,
too long. It's too long. It was too convoluted. I won't tell you what it was, but
okay,
that was a proud moment.
I got you. How do you deal with social media? Good, bad, indifferent. It depends on the context.
Well, again, I know I keep coming back to this idea of sticking a fork in a socket or landmines. You have to be so careful when you're dealing with the issues that editorial cartoonists deal with, that I find that talking about it on social media or arguing about it, it's just going to get you in more trouble, and it's just not wise. So I like to post my cartoons on social media and let others argue about it or discuss it. I don't like to get into it with people. And what I was going to say, the earlier thing is, I had a thin skin when I started, but you learn to just toughen up and ignore things and not take them personally. People used to send me emails disagreeing with my cartoon, and so I'd write them back with a paragraph explaining myself, and then they'd send me a 2-paragraph rebuttal, and then I'd send them a 3-paragraph explanation of why their rebuttal was wrong, and it just would go on indefinitely. And you learn that you just have to write, "We have to agree to disagree. Thank you for reading the Union Tribune."
Yeah, no, that's yeah. Listen, you follow our PR advice. I appreciate you doing that. One last question before I turn it over to Nancy, and then Steve, are you okay to stick around afterwards to answer others too?
Sure.
All right, here's one question before we turn back over to Nancy. What do you think about graffiti?
Well, it's illegal, but so the law and order the law and order part of my brain says it's bad, but man, I think Banksy he's an editorial cartoonist, isn't he? He's so brilliant. So no, any kids out there considering graffiti, I would say, don't do it. Have your parents get you a nice big pad of paper.
All right, that's a very diplomatic answer. Well, listen, Steve, great, slides you showed, wonderful questions, answers to these questions, and I appreciate you sticking around a bit. And Nancy, it's all yours.
All right. That was absolutely fascinating. I love the dialogue. I'm sure that all of our audience, really just appreciated your candid responses and, just super interesting. I must say, I have met you personally, Steve, but you are the first editorial cartoonist I have ever met. And it's just, really interesting to see how, and I'm sure that, when you were a kid, it wasn't, gee, this is what I'm going to grow up to be, but I understand why your mother is so proud of you, especially winning Pulitzer Prizes. So, just amazing. And I know that you and Drew know each other well. So the banter back and forth is very interesting to listen to. But again, this is the National University Speaker Series. We have had so many interesting speakers like Steve Breen. We have a few more that will be coming up that we'll be publicizing in the very near future. But this has been a way to just reach out to our community members, which include our alumni and staff and students. And we just really, appreciate the opportunity to have you listen to such diverse topics on different areas. And Steve has been kind enough to share his contact information. And if you look him up online or look up his images, you can see, those. How many total cartoons have you done so far, Steve? If you're doing a couple hundred a year?
Yeah, I think it was something like 5,000 at least for the UT, for the Union Tribune alone.
Yeah,
5,000.
that's just amazing. It's like reliving history through cartoons. I mean, because so many things are so relevant towards different periods. But as far as, additional announcements, we don't have any. So I'd love to just turn it back to Drew to ask Steve a few more of the compelling questions that are in the Q&A, because there's some really interesting ones.
No, I really hand it to I've been doing this about 12 times now, Nancy, and
At least.
well, listen, the attendees ask great questions. They could easily moderate this as well as I can, if not better on that. So I very much appreciate that. Steve, here's a question that actually you wanted me to ask you. What is your favorite type of cartoon to create?
My favorite cartoon is one that I've thought of early in the day so that I have time to put into the artwork, and I'm not stressed, I'm relaxed, and I could really realize the vision. We were talking about artists and having that vision and trying to create something that they're 100% satisfied. So some days I could get up into the high 90s with satisfaction from drawing a very clear, clean cartoon that gets my point across just like that. Kind of like the eagle sharpening his talons.
Right. It is a good question, and it makes sense based on the fact you've done 5,000 cartoons, editorial cartoons, just with the UT, not counting what you did at the Asbury Press. How do you sit there and stay sharp and maintain your passion for this? Some days it must be tough to do that, correct?
Yeah. Well, it's you have your good days and your bad days. You feel more inspired than on some days. If I've read a lot and I'm passionate about an issue, the cartoon is going to be a lot better. If I'm fired up about something, if I'm angry about something, cartoon's going to be a lot better. If it's a cartoon on some water district policy in East County, chances are it might not be my best work, but I'll try. I will try.
Yeah, I really like this question. What comes first, the words or the image, or are they simultaneous? How does that?
Yes. It's like music or lyrics, right? On a song. It could go either way. Sometimes what I'll do is a lot of times when I read the news, a phrase, maybe a reporter will use a phrase, or there'll be a headline and there'll be a really neat couple of words in that headline, and that'll inspire something visually in my brain. It's just the way us cartoonists are wired. Sometimes when I'm stuck and I can't come up with an idea, I'll draw the person, or I'll draw the thing, the topic of this cartoon topic that we're kind of focusing on. And I'll just kind of stare at it and, oh, maybe I should add these words. Maybe he or she would be saying this, So sometimes staring at the image can force words, but sometimes a cool phrase can force an image.
Yeah. So here's a nice question. This is by Sarah. Please introduce some modern tools for bringing ideas in to draw for someone like me. This is Sarah speaking, who cannot draw. And I can relate to that, Sarah.
Well, I always like to say, use Gary Larson as an example. Gary Larson was not Picasso. He wasn't Michelangelo. He was not the best draftsman. But his ideas were fantastic. So don't worry if you can't draw. Everyone has ideas inside of them. Everyone has passion about something. So just draw like no one's going to see it. And the more you do, the more confident you will get. But certainly reading the work of other cartoonists might inspire you and might kind of teach you some tricks, There's books and tutorials. YouTube, there is no shortage of videos teaching you how to draw on YouTube. And I use Procreate. A lot of people probably wonder what I draw with. And there's an app called Procreate that works like a charm with an iPad and an Apple Pencil. And I can't say enough good things about it. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So we had talked about, who knows where the future is going to lead you. Obviously, you're going to continue to do cartoons. There's no question about that, and probably some books down the road on this. But I chatted about this, a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago. But if you were to wave the magic wand and say, okay, you're going to hire yourself, right? What would you do? What is job one? I want this job, and that's what I want to do. What would that be?
Wow.
I gave you a month to think about this, remember?
Yeah. What would I want to do? Practically speaking, I've always thought that cartooning is like advertising, isn't it? Editorial cartooning. You're combining art and copy, and you're trying to persuade, point of view. So I always thought that I'd be a pretty good ad person or a marketing person. But in terms of a dream job, like if I could do anything and I didn't have to worry about bills or anything like that, is that what you're asking?
Well, you just say whatever you wanted to do. You're making $1 million, so it doesn't make then you won't have to worry about bills, right?
I just love the outdoors, and I love our parks, our national parks. So I think a park ranger.
Well, listen, there you go. We need creative park rangers out there. Here's a question from Michael on this, and a sort of interesting one. That do you allow the art to speak to you by free writing, or do you plot the ideas?
Well, I think it could go either way. There's probably not as much forethought as you might think in a cartoon or the cartoons that I do throughout the week or the month. A lot of times it's just trying to not embarrass myself, just trying to meet my deadline. I think it's like that for a lot of editorial cartoonists.
Good. So Cynthia wants to know, are you for hire? and for independent projects. And I'll say I'm Steve's agent effective immediately. And you can just work through me, Cynthia.
And you take the Colonel Tom Parker 50%,
Listen,
70%.
I would take 0%. But in all seriousness, to Cynthia's question.
Yeah. If the project's right and it seems fun, then I would entertain in anything, almost anything. So sure, she could email me.
Yeah. So, okay. And how do they, at what, Breen Tunes? How do they get hold of it?
BreenTunes@gmail.com.
Right. Exactly. You got 7 kids. Any of them wanted to become an editorial cartoonist?
Oh, I'm telling them not to. I'm telling them to spare themselves the stress and the gray hairs. No, but I do have some kids who are really good, believe it or not, at drawing and design. Really, I have 2 girls in particular who are fantastic.
Yeah. That is absolutely terrific. Yeah, in that area. If you were to, I love putting my good friend Steve on the spot. He's usually good at answering these questions too. If you were to choose a different career, just let's say editorial cartooning did not work out, it didn't, you see Riverside, Asbury Prep, what would you be doing?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't be law. I took the LSAT and I didn't do too well on the LSAT. It would be something creative. It would be something creative, and I like working with people. I've sat at a desk for a lot of my career, and every once in a while I've collaborated with colleagues at the newspaper. You and I have kind of done things, but I love creative collaboration.
Yeah, that's there's no question about it. I know, if I can say, I've been honored to work with you for many, many years, Steve, and you've been so magnanimous when you used to address all types of groups we'd bring into the paper, senior groups, kids from high school, elementary school, and so forth, and always free with your time and so forth in that aspect of it. So I know we're going to look forward to seeing what you can do working with us at Cloudcast Media. We got some ideas on that aspect as well. Steve, any final comments for our audience in inspiring words that they want to become in the world of cartoonists, whatever type of cartoonists?
Well, don't forget, especially young people, don't forget the importance of reading. A lot of people think to be a good cartoonist, you have to know how to draw, and drawing is important, having those skills. But what's more important is the idea behind the cartoon, right? Good art is not going to save a weak idea. Okay, so read as much as you can. It fuels the imagination.
Okay, I lied. There's one more question. Okay. How were you notified when you won the Pulitzer or Pulitzers? And do you know which cartoon secured that honor on both of those?
Yeah, so it's a portfolio of 20. So each year it was a portfolio of 20 of my favorite cartoons from the previous year. And you could go to Pulitzer.org if you want to check those out. You can find your way to the cartooning category. And it's such a thrill to win, to be told. It was the first time I was just sitting in the newsroom at the Asbury Park Press. That newspaper had never won a Pulitzer. So it's one thing to win a Pulitzer at the New York Times, I guess, or the Washington Post, or the LA Times. But if you're going to win a Pulitzer, I'm telling you, win one at a newspaper that's never won a Pulitzer before, because it is a thrill for everybody, and it's just such excitement. It was great.
Well, I remember when you won the Pulitzer for us. That was also a pretty big deal.
It was a big deal. It was fun for the Union Tribune too, and I was so happy to bring one home for the newspaper. And Karen Winter, who's so great and hired me, and David Copley, was just kind of on his way out, but I got a call from Bob Kittle, my friend, it was the editor, and I was on vacation, and he told me the news while I was away. I was trying to catch a plane. I was at a hotel, getting our family packed up to get us out of the hotel. And any dad or mom could tell you that when you're trying to pack everyone up at a hotel to catch a plane flight, it's a very busy time. But that's right when I got the call from my editor Bob that I had won.
No, that was it was
Great.
quite a deal. Steve, so good to see you, my good friend. Thank you for your presentation. It was wonderful, and Nancy, I'm sure our listeners enjoyed it.
Yes, and thank you so much to all of our guests in the audience. We had a lot of people who stayed till the very end. We know that we'll have a lot of you that will listen to the recording again. So we truly appreciate it. Drew, make sure to catch Drew's show, Spotlight on the Community, from his podcast with Cloudcast Media. Steve, we look forward to decades of more interesting and entertaining cartoons from you, more children's books. And we look forward to just seeing that creativity continue to carry you through your success in your career, because I know I have a lot of friends that were artists and they've gone in different directions, from architecture to actually ending up like in Hollywood and special effects and things. And, when you've got that creative talent, you can put it to many uses. And I think that your career has been, just fascinating. And we appreciate, seeing a little bit of history and your talent and, just tackling some very tough and serious issues at times. And sometimes that artistic element just brings it home for all of us. So thank you to the National University team, Heather and Jen Toll, with the speaker series. And we will let you know when we have another speaker series announced. We will definitely have one during the month of September. Thank you so much on behalf of National University and to our entire team. Good night.